Good afternoon. Welcome to the Meredith Select Board Workshop of November 17, 2014 at the Meredith Community Center in Meredith. We have, I believe, one item on the workshop tonight, W14-28. I'm sorry, I will first introduce the board members. Hillary Seeger.
Hello.
Lou Kahn.
Good afternoon.
Nathan Tor.
Good afternoon.
Vice Chair Peter Brothers.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And Carla Horn. Phil Warren, our town manager.
Good afternoon.
And Karen Landry, our recording clerk. And back to W14-28, Reardon Lot Restoration Request. John, would you like to present for that?
Should have this pretty well rehearsed by now.
We have a script, and we just cut and paste.
More taxes.
All set?
Thanks.
Good afternoon. This is our fourth request for lot restoration Board of Selectmen process.
Is that mic on?
This is our fourth request for lot restoration. We've processed one on Bear Island initially. We processed one at the end of Harris Road, and most recently we processed one on Lockheed Shores. So this is our fourth. In the audience tonight is Mr. Reardon, and he's with Carl Johnson, who has done some field work for him, and both of those gentlemen will be available to answer any questions later on if you had any of them. So the purpose of this workshop is, like we have in the other ones, is to introduce you to the particulars of this particular request. The map and lot in question is located on Collins Brook Road. You do have a location map in your packet that should look like this. And then basically this gives you a sense of an orientation of where we are in town. The lower right map gives you a feel that this is on the frontage of Lake Windsquam. This is a blow-up of the tax map, so you can get a sense of some of the abutters that would be involved when we get to the formal stage. So we're on Collins Brook Road and Lake Windsquam. Lot 41, the lot owned by the Reardons, is approximately 1.9 acres in size and has a total of 502 feet of waterfront on Lake Windsquam. From a development point of view, Lot 41 includes a single-family dwelling, a well, state-approved septic system, shed, and a dock. The original construction of the camp dates to 1938, and more recently there had been a significant porch addition to the property. Also included are some photographs. You have those in front of you. The first one, small letter A, is a shot looking down the length of Collins Brook Road, and the gravel area to the right in that picture is the entrance to the developed portion of the lot. Small letter B is a look down the private driveway that goes down to the developed portion of the lot. You can notice the slope off to the right is a fairly significant sloping property. When you get down to the bottom of that driveway, you come to small c, which is the cottage that I mentioned that was initially developed in '38. And you can see the porch addition in that picture as well. And then the fourth picture, the last picture, is a view towards that's a view of, if you're wondering what part of Lake Windsquam is, that is the very northerly limit of Windsquam. You can see the very northerly shoreline in that photograph, and that's the beginning portion of the undeveloped tract that we'll talk about in a minute. So it gives you a little bit of a sense of the kind of area we're in as far as frontage goes. Lot 41 is comprised of two distinct and separate tracts that have separate origins and conveyance history. The significance of that is that we don't have, unlike our other ones that we've processed that had a subdivision approved by the planning board, recorded at the registry. This, and I'll go over this in a minute, this dates back to the 40s. So this predates subdivision laws and planning boards by decades. So we don't have the benefit of a reference subdivision plan. So we did do some deed review, and I'll get to that in a minute. But as we have in the past, we want to know where those improvements are relative to the two lots to determine whether or not there's any overt act on the part of an owner or prior owner to consider these as one lot. So in this case, Carl Johnson was hired by the Reardons to inspect the property, and he has come to the conclusion that the improvements that I mentioned earlier, that are in the photographs, the dwelling and the septic and so forth, are all located on track one of the two lots, and that the other track is essentially vacant. And there's a copy of his letter in your packet as well. So back to the deed history. The long and short of it is that there are two lots that are separate creatures. In 1947, a gentleman by the name of John Collins conveyed to Kelly a property that had 357 feet of frontage. And in subsequent deeds, that became referred to as Tract 1. In 1948, a year later, a gentleman by the name of Henry Roussel conveyed to Collins the adjoining lot that had 145 feet of frontage. So the two clearly separately described, separately conveyed lots. And in subsequent deeds, that's referred to as Tract 2. Eventually, Tract 2 was reconveyed, so they're separate lots. And in 1970, Kelly conveys to Robert and Edwina, husband and wife, Tracts 1 and 2 in one deed. And then in 1985, Jeremiah and Barbara Reardon acquired the property via one deed, Tracts 1 and 2, from Edwina Kelly. So we have this separate lot origin, separate lot conveyance, and then the two lots were conveyed as a package in two separate instances up to the present. In reviewing the legal stuff, I won't beat the dead horse here, but you've had legal opinions from counsel in the past in terms of the scope of the board's authority given the mandates that's reflected in the statutes. I won't belabor that. It is noted in the staff report. If you have any questions, please let me know. So as I mentioned, the two lots in question have separate origins, initially conveyed as separate lots, then they came into ownership by the same owner, and then were conveyed as Tracts 1 and 2 two times over. As I mentioned, we do not have a subdivision plan per se, but we do have deed descriptions in the separate lots. From a staffing point of view, what we look for is to determine whether or not we can find any evidence of a voluntary merger on the property of the owner. Because this dates back to the 40s, we don't have the merger book. You've heard us refer to the 200 some odd mergers that occurred in the 70s. This predates that. There's nothing in the statute that precludes us considering this, but it's a little bit different than the ones in that regard. So in reviewing the deed language, that we went back as far back as the 40s. The 1940s deed refers to a 1913 deed, and we stopped at that point because these small lots were part of a huge piece of Winnisquam frontage at that time. So as I indicated, we don't have a subdivision plan, but we do have the deed descriptions to work from if we had to recreate the shared line between the two. So in summary, we have no evidence of a voluntary merger on the part of the current owner or the prior owner. I've highlighted the distinctions between this application and the others just from an informational point of view. For discussion purposes, I've drafted a similar motion that we've used in the past to make clear that we are relying upon information submitted by an applicant, and so on and so forth. I won't belabor you with the text, but that kind of hits the high points. The vacant lot is what I would call a challenged lot, no question about it. It's steep sloping, it's got some wetlands near the frontage. Its development potential is, there'll be challenges facing someone if they were to develop it. But as we've discussed in the past, it'd be a lot of record. They're subject to the applicable zoning and requirements, and there could be a shared driveway required. I mean, these will all be private civil matters that would have to be figured out between buyers and sellers. But it's not a flat lot by any stretch. But that's for others to figure out if and when it's decided to develop the vacant lot. I'd be happy to address any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Questions from the board?
I have a question for Carl, not for
Ask away.
Carl, in your letter, you say your site inspection showed no improvements on track 2. How come you didn't stop there? Instead, you go on and you say which would result in nonconformity. So are there improvements on track 2?
For the record, my name is Carl Johnson, for advancing today.
Thank you, Carl.
The answer to Mr. Khan's question is no. What we were hired to do is to determine whether or not there were any development issues on either track which would result in a nonconformity. Primarily, the concern is that in some cases, there would be some type of a structure which was constructed over which would be the division line between either the 2 lots or the 2 tracks, which would seem to indicate at some point in time that the parties considered the properties to be 1 instead of 2. In this particular case, one of the tracks is developed, as Mr. Edgar stated, and the other one is not. So there is no development. It's a vacant lot.
When was the porch put in?
Maybe the town has some information on that.
I guess no, my question would be, if the porch was put in after we had zoning, does the porch meet the side setback requirement?
There's no issue with the side setback, I can tell you that.
And I'm all done.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, Hillary?
I have a question for you too. Just want to see you get up and down a lot. It says that Robert Kelly acquired the tract separately, tract 1 in 1947 and tract 2 in 1949. And at some time the town merged them without the owner consent. So that was, if they were merged prior to that, how did they buy them separately? I can't just sell half my yard.
John?
In this case, we don't know. We don't, as I mentioned, we don't have this. We have 200 some odd mergers in the merger book from the 1970s. This predates that. We do not know what the circumstances were at the time these became merged. We are the custodians of the tax maps, and we do know that at some point the tax maps in the, I believe, the 50s reflect these as merged. So in the 47, 48, 49 timeframe, they were acquired separately. And then the 50s vintage, first go around of the tax maps show them as one lot. We do not know the circumstances that led to that. But the burden is on us to show that it isn't that, it's to show whether they were voluntarily merged by the property owner. In other words, the presumption is that we did it, if you will, absent any other proof to the contrary. So they were acquired separately. They were then acquired by the same property owner. So he owns 2 lots, left and right. And then at some point, the town's tax maps reflect that as 1 lot. And that's the merger, but we do not know specifically what the circumstances of that merger were.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other comments? Thank you, John. At this time, I guess we will just ask.
Just
Go ahead.
one question. I realize we have Carl's letter that says no improvements are on track 2 that result in a nonconformity. But typically what we do get supplied by from the owner is some sort of a scale drawing or something showing where the buildings are in respect to the 2 subject tracks. So in terms of the future, it might just be helpful for us, that's all.
Thank you, Peter. Going back to the RSA, so initially,
Well, I have no question in terms of what our task is. I just was trying to identify.
I would agree with you, but just remind the board that in the past, we have simply relied upon what's been submitted by the owners. And the sketch work has been pretty crude.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and at least in this case, we have Mr. Reardon contracting with a licensed land surveyor who does this, comfortable with reviewing land for a living. And so I think there's a little more, it's not like the neighbor giving us a letter saying, hey, everything's okay. We actually hired a surveyor to walk the property, and and to render an opinion. So yes, I agree with you, it's not exactly like the sketches we've had in the past, but on the other hand, it might even be more reliable than that, given the...
Madam Chairman?
Yes?
I agree totally with your statement, and no offense to you either, Carl, in terms of that, but I'm just suggesting that, you know, if we were looking at it in a sketch, so that if anybody looked back at this file, they might be able to, you know, to see it. It still is a representation either by the landowner, or in this case, the landowner's agent, who happens to be a surveying company.
Right, and towards that end, and to be consistent with the flags that we're providing for anybody that checks the chain of title at the registry, in the draft motion, we indicate, and the language is modified because we're not looking at the sketch plan, but they've indicated a letter confirming that improvements on lot 41 are located on track 1 and that track 2 is vacant. So even though it's not based upon a sketch, we did build that into the draft motion so that, and then to go on to say that we have not, as a municipality, caused any independent verification. So this is what we're relying upon. We have not had it independently verified, and all of those steps are consistent with what we've done on the 3 prior applications.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Madam Chairman, I do have, additionally, there was a plan done in 1984, and I'm not sure if John made that a part of your packet or not, but that plan was done for Edwina Kelly, and it essentially shows the 2 tracks, and as John mentioned, track 1 is the larger of the track, with several hundred, a couple hundred feet anyways, of frontage, and it does show the existing dwelling on that tract, and it does show it consistent with what's there today, with the exception of the porch that was added. And just by eye, it looks to be about 100 feet from the division line between track 1 and track 2. So for a visual aid, this plan is a sufficient tool to use in terms of how the property was developed in '84 and how it remains developed today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
And just so you don't suspect that I'm pulling a fast one, it is alluded
Never made
to.
that statement.
It is alluded to in the staff report that Carl submitted it. In discussing it with Phil, it's not recorded. So, and so I didn't, you know, our past practice has been to bring to you subdivision plans that have been recorded. That's not a recorded survey. It does have illustrative value, that, as Carl suggested, and it is mentioned in my staff report, but because it wasn't something that was recorded, I didn't provide you a copy of it. But we have it if it's something that you'd like to see.
Good, thank you.
Fair
It
enough.
is in the file.
Okay, cool.
So consensus from the board to have Phil schedule a public hearing.
Yep. Yes.
Phil,
Got it.
thank you for coming in, John and Carl.
What's the cutoff date on unmerging the 200 mergers?
December 6, 2016.
December 31, 2016.
2 more years.
Okay, 2 more years.
Yep, but we got it down with science, though.
That's true.
You know, the way I look at it is, you know, if they're unmerging, we're gonna see some real estate activity, development,
It's a good thing.
real estate taxes.
Thank you.
Anything that you need above and beyond what you have for the public hearing, everybody's pretty well set?
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Carl, thank you, John.
Yeah.
December. The W14-29 library budget update will be rescheduled for December 1st. We're not prepared for that tonight. And at this time, I will adjourn the workshop and we'll take a 10-minute recess. Workshop adjourned. Good afternoon, welcome to the Meredith Select Board regular meeting of November 17th, 2014 at the Meredith Community Center. At this time, would you please stand and join Ms. Seeger in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Hillary. I'm not going to say roll call tonight. I'll introduce the members. Hillary Seeger,
Hello.
Lou Kahn,
Good afternoon.
Nate Tor,
Good afternoon.
Vice Chair Peter Brothers,
Good evening.
and Carl Moore.
Still got 15.
Phil Moore, and our town manager,
Good evening.
and our recording clerk, Karen Landry. At this time, I will take a motion to accept no minutes.
No minutes, because we're out of sync with our schedule.
Who wrote this agenda? Do we have a town manager's report?
That you do, well, I don't know. No, you do. Sorry, I could have resisted. Oh, yeah. We'll leave it off. Our tax bills are in the process of being, can you hear me, Eric? Yeah, there we go. Process of being prepared, and they should probably go out in the mail on the 21st, and our tax rate for 2014 total will be $14.83. I will learn how to speak in 1 minute. The town rate for this year is $4.77, which is up 22 cents from the $4.55 that we had last year. Remember when we set the budget, it was set so the tax rate was going to go up 25 cents. By the time we calculated it, it went up approximately 22 cents. Based on the value, it doesn't always end up to be exact science. The county rate, which I did check this because it was interesting, the county rate was $1.51 for last year. The county rate for this year is $1.41, resulting in a 10-cent decrease. Now, as you're aware, there's a couple of things going on there. Number one, Lakes Region Mutual Aid is no longer in the tax rate. The local school rate is $6, which on the 2013 tax rate, it was $5.76 for an increase of 24 cents. I'm going slow, Aaron, I know. And the state school rate is $2.65 for 2014. In 2013, it was $2.59 for an increase of 6 cents, for a total rate of $14.83, or an increase of 42 cents from last year. Our assessment ratio, I just talked to Jim, it won't be calculated until probably in February, but right now it is at 99.2%. And the tax bills will probably go out on or about the 21st, which would make them due a month thereafter, give or take a day. I can't give you the exact date because I don't have it. And
Merry Christmas.
yeah. Well, here's what we wrestle with all the time, and you say that, is that the biggest thing is we want to get them out before the end of the year because they do have personal income tax implications for folks. So the way we end up in the queue here, we end up either on the front side or the back side of Christmas. One of the other things that presented a wrinkle in this information would have been able to be presented probably a week or two earlier, but we were held up by, again, what's called the school apportionment, which is where they determine our piece of the state school tax, and the village district commitment, which I have learned for this year is 0. So apparently the village district either did not or chose not to file for any taxes, and that's the Maple Ridge Village District.
Yeah.
But they did hold us up because DRA would not let us have our tax rate certified until they actually consulted with the village district folks. What I'm going to do after the first of the year is reach out to the village district and make it clear to them that there are implications when they don't file and it holds up our tax rate, because as much as I'm concerned about, as you said, Peter, the Merry Christmas, I'm more concerned about our processes, because we're actually in the middle of a budget process where we could have put this on the shelf and couldn't because we were putting a holding pad in because of that village district.
Madam Chairman, actually, Phil, I was being facetious when I said that, but your discussion on the potential tax implications for some of our landowners, I think, is probably the most important feature, and that's not a lot of days to, shall we say, man the office to get those in receipt. So that was really more of the issue. Follow up on the village district. Now, they didn't put anything in, but the state potentially delayed us along with setting the state rate for the school portion. But is there anything in the statute that allows us to set a deadline for that to be submitted so that all our data can go to the Department of Revenue Administration so we don't get ourselves in this situation potentially in the future?
I don't know, but I will look into it.
I'd like to explore that, yeah.
Because that would be nice if we could say, you know, it has to be in by this date.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not aware if there's either a law or a regulation through DRA that allows, but we will, we'll look into it with both the law and then with DRA to see if there's something they can do to assist us, so it doesn't hold us up.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
No, I got a couple other things. Guess one of them is
Oil.
oil boats. Yeah, it is oil, actually, and we're going back to the other one about marking your driveway, because we had snow today. But yes, used oil is accepted at the transfer station. As I had reminded in the past, both the police and fire chief and the public works director would ask that you keep your driveway clear as much as possible. You put a note out, a sign out with your street numbers. I don't know where I got a note from. A sign out with your street number so that when emergency personnel respond to your house, they can get there in a timely fashion because seconds count when you call them. And I will tell you from traveling up and down these streets, it's awful difficult to respond to an emergency call and try to find house numbers when the houses are off the road. And the other issue that comes up perennially is we are under the parking ban now. There's no car parking allowed overnight. And please do not plow or place your snow into the roadway. The Conservation Commission is assisting us in cataloging knotweed locations. It's a new project they're taking on at this point. I'm sure the knotweed's dying as we speak, but if you're aware of any locations along a town roadway, please email the location and a picture if you could to my email address, pwarren@meredithnh.org. Our health insurance is going to decrease, and yes, I said decrease, 0.5% with no plan changes or increases in or out-of-pocket costs for the employee. This should decrease the budget as set by approximately $60,000. We programmed a 5% increase, which was a conservative figure. I'm told there are some agencies that are seeing, most agencies are seeing between a 5 and 15% increase, and there's one instance where they're going up 18%. The key here is we are not shifting costs to save money on health insurance, so it's not like what generally happens, your rate's going to drop, but your deductibles are going up, your co-pays are going up. None of that is changing. That's due to three things. Number one, our utilization is down. Number two, when plan participants utilize the plan, they utilize it in an appropriate format, i.e. the emergency room is used just what it's to be, is for emergencies. And another piece that goes along with this is Harvard Pilgrim, who is our health insurance carrier, offers tailored solutions for people who have either chronic illness, have medical conditions. They offer a wellness program that's tailored to their specific instance. One that I'm aware of is they have a diabetic education program. So if you're seeing your primary care physician for diabetes-related issues and you're receiving medications that pertain to the treatment of diabetes, you receive specific case management based on that condition. So you receive specific mailings, you're pointed to a case manager, and from what we're seeing in our utilization, I'm sure it's working. And that is a big savings for us anytime we can have these wellness plans that cut down on the utilization of the program. As I said earlier about our other insurances, we are receiving quotes for our workers' compensation and our property and liability insurance. The quote we got from the workers' compensation was a comfortable quote, but we've also received a quote from Primex, and we're awaiting 1, 2, 3 others for our property and liability and our public officials liability insurance. And I'm cautiously optimistic as to how those quotes are going to come in. I expect that we will see savings from what is programmed currently in the budget. And the last issue I have is I'm looking for specific direction on how to proceed in the gravel road matter. It's my position, and it's the position of the Public Works Director, that the town's acting in a prudent manner currently as it relates to the gravel road maintenance. Accordingly, I'd like some clear direction from the board for any future steps that we would take, and this specifically references the letter that we received from Mr. Hebert.
Madam Chair,
Hillary?
as far as the gravel road matter goes, Phil, I actually don't see a purpose to spending a whole bunch of money on this. It seems to me that the Public Works Director and the Town Manager, being you, are handling this properly and in the best and most expeditious manner that it can be done. So I just think that if you keep doing what you're doing, I would recommend that the board back you up on that and back up Mike Fowler as well.
Thank you, Hillary. Lou?
Well, you saw that I went out and did a survey and found that most of the complaints seemed unwarranted. We do have a statutory requirement to rebuild a wall when it falls down into one of our culverts, and we haven't done that. Now, rebuilding the wall is not a big deal. It's just a dry stone wall. You just take the stone out of the hole and put it back up again. But we do have a statutory requirement to remedy damage that is caused by putting in a culvert. We ought to just get to that culvert and fix it. Now, the other suggestion I made is, it seems to me that when they spread gravel and then they dig the ditch, they use the outside edge of the last ditch as a sort of a marker. And I was just going to suggest, and maybe we can check this with our gravel road engineers, if you move that in 12 inches, I think you're really going to solve a good deal of the problem with walls caving in from ditches. Now, the other thing is, who is going to explain to Mr. Hebert and his colleagues what our position is? I would send them, you can send them my memo, you can send them a statement as to what the board's position is, but I think we got to do something. I think, it's only fair. They've asked us for our views, and we haven't responded. So if we're going to respond that we think everything is hunky-dory, that's what we ought to do. But I have made this suggestion, and I would personally like it if that could be taken up with our gravel road engineers and see what they think about that. I've got a wall that, could fall in. Indeed, a little bit of it did. Not a big deal. I went out with my tractor and I put the stones back up on the wall. But, that's going to happen in other places. I did not see any other place other than that one culvert where that had happened.
Any other comments?
Madam Chairman, I agree with what two of my selectmen have said so far, but I also would just like to, shall we say, remind myself and others that a lot of times, even though it appears that we may be looking at spending money, there's reasoning behind that. We may question the amount, but the mission, as I see it, is we have tried to, shall we say, categorize, expand written procedures, validate processes and procedures that we have by getting some of these consultants on board. And I agree that I think we've done a good job overall, and we need to support that. But I think we have to also bear in mind that there's reasoning behind that. As many of you know, we have some challenged. People are looking for fairness, they're looking for consistency, and they're looking for guidance. And anytime we have those processes and procedures spelled out, it can be helpful both to the public and also to our employees in terms of how they do properly respond. So I just wanted to add that from my own sake. Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Does Nate have anything to say first, and then,
I'll wait. I have something, but I want...
go ahead, Nate.
I want to wait.
I'd like for each of you to take a turn, if that's the way we should do it.
Okay, Madam Chair, just a quick thought, and that's dealing with what Lou said there. First of all, we have got guidelines now, and I think just maybe a small adjustment in the ditching would probably be part of the thing, but I do think we should respond, but I think we also should be a little more diligent, check out the places and see the who, whats, and wheres. I know some of the comments about trees girdling, to girdle a tree, to kill it, you have to cut it all the way around, and things like that I don't see it happening. So I think it's kind of backing up and looking around again, shall we say.
Well,
I would just say that nothing that I have suggested would incur any expense, other than having a couple of guys go out with a backhoe and replace, and build up that wall again in that one spot. I did also suggest, though, that it would not be a bad idea to go around and look to see if there were some places where we could put in more culverts or runoff ditches. But that's something that certainly can be done by the Public Works Department. If they think that there's a place where they could put in another culvert or a ditch and it would help, they can recommend it, otherwise not. But nothing have I suggested that really runs into an expense on an ongoing basis. If you're going to dig the ditch, you're just going to dig the ditch anyway. So,
Madam Chair?
Hillary,
Yeah, what Lou said made a ton of sense to me, especially we have a statutory requirement to rebuild the wall, go out, put the wall back up, maybe move in a few inches so that we don't knock walls over anymore, and that seems like we're just doing the same thing we're doing now, and we're not incurring any additional expense, and that would be something that would be under Phil's and Mike's direction, I'm sure. It seems that seems pretty logical.
thank you, Hillary. I'll add my opinion. First off, I think that Mike Fowler and Phil Warren are charged, I don't think, I know, they are charged with maintaining our roads, and they do a good job of it. And the select board is charged with the prudential affairs of the town. And I think that's the way we should leave it. If there's a problem where possibly one of the town employees was drunk and drove his truck off the road with the plow and knocked over a stone wall, then that would be a whole different story, and we would attend to that as needed. But in the meantime, I think, actually I've driven those roads for the last 52 years, and I think they look better today than they have ever. And I think that stone walls, potentially that are 200 years old, can fall over based on not so much of a truck or a ditch being moved, but the fact that stone walls heave with winter and spring and frost heaving, that could be a potential for why stone walls have fallen down. And if they're falling down to a point where there's a problem, I'm sure that Mr. Fowler will make sure that they are attended to. And I guess that's about all I have to say with it. So my opinion is we don't need to do anything other than let the people that we employ do their jobs.
Madam Chair,
Phil?
and in my effort to simplify this, that's why I had asked the board. So if I'm hearing correctly, first off, let's see what we need to do here. Number one, the board has received a request for information. I think at some point the board needs to respond to that request and say whatever it chooses. I'm hearing that from a couple of the members that you're comfortable with what's being done today. I mean, that could be the response back to the folks that wrote the letter. Number two, the other issue is the stone wall that Lou brings up. I would be more than happy to look into that, and I am aware of that statute, Lou, but I'm not aware that the failure of that stone wall is directly related to our ditching efforts. It may be.
No, it's not related, that's a culvert.
Right, but I don't know if it's directly related to that either. It
Oh, it's
may be.
quite clearly related to the culvert.
Does anyone have that statute here tonight?
I do.
If it's not too lengthy, could you read it out loud?
Oh, you don't really want to hear this.
No, I do, actually.
That's-
Or at least the pertinent points of it, if
Yeah,
it's
let me
10 pages long.
I'm getting it.
I think for the public, if we're talking
Well,
about statutes, we should
it's,
at least be able to tell
this
people
is-
what it
this
is.
It's kind of blowing things out of proportion. What we're talking is one culvert. It's RSA 231:75. Damages from grade or drainage change, assessment by selectmen. If in repairing a highway by the authority of the town, the grade is raised or lowered, or a ditch made at the side thereof, or a new culvert, ditch, or other drainage structure is installed, or alterations are made to any existing culvert, ditch, or drainage structure, whereby damage is occasioned to any estate adjoining or not adjoining said highway, thank you, the determination of the amount of damages, if any, due to an aggrieved owner shall be determined as follows. And it has a long provision about sending the owner of the property a notice, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. All right? Then it says, no such notice shall be required in cases where none of the work proposed is to be done outside the limit of the highway right of way, and such work consists solely of maintenance, grading, or cleaning, or repairing existing ditches, or repairing or replacing existing culverts or drainage structures without altering their size, depth, or positioning. Then it says, let's see, it says you don't have to have a hearing. I'm trying to shorten this. You don't have to have a hearing if the damage results and you haven't, it's been just sort of ordinary work and you haven't had to send a notice. But it doesn't say that you don't have to make good on it. So,
But what does it say about the rock wall and the culvert being inside the right-of-way of the road? If it's inside the right-of-way of the road, the town doesn't have a responsibility to maintain it, to rebuild it. And that's the issue we come up against. Many of these structures are inside the right-of-way.
Phil, on those roads that I rode,
Yep.
there was only one place where a wall had fallen down, and it was clearly because a new culvert had been put in and a bigger hole. Whether or not that was in the right-of-way or not in the right-of-way, I don't know. I don't know what the right-of-way is out there in Comeau. Could be 2 rods, which is fairly common.
Yeah.
But why the hell are we struggling with picking up dry stone and putting it back on the edge, on the other side of the hole? Why don't we just do it? Make people happy out there.
Because if it's in the right-of-way and we do it for one person, Lou, we have to do it for everybody.
I
We're
didn't-
trying to be consistent.
I didn't see any problem other than this one hole.
Right, we have issues out there where residents have come to us and asked us to make modifications or repairs or enhancements to items that are inside the right-of-way. One that comes to mind is a gentleman that came to me with a concern about his wood pile.
His wood pile.
His wood pile. So if I'm doing it to a rock wall, what stops me from doing it to a wood pile? And then what stops it for me have to do driveways and mailbox replacements? These are the things that we consider when we address these issues, is that they have some runout.
I have a suggestion for the board. How about we, maybe Phil could ask Mike to go out and look at the suspect stone wall, and also Phil could write a letter to all of the above, whoever needs to receive it, and state that we have taken it under advisement and we will look at the roads or look at the stone walls or whatever is damaged. And Phil and Mike will take care of it accordingly. How about that for a suggestion?
Madam Chair, if I could, I would strongly suggest that the letter come from the board and not from me, because it was directed to you. Because our position's been, we're doing what we need to do. We've told these folks that repeatedly, and the message doesn't get conveyed.
Thank you, Phil. I was simply stating that you would type it and not me.
Oh, okay. That I could do. That's why I was... That's easy.
Welcome home. Is the board okay with that?
Because I just got home, can you tell me?
Madam Chairman, I don't think we should suggest that we're taking it under advisement and we're going to give it further consideration, because it sounds like we're not.
What are we further considering?
We're not further considering anything.
Right, so,
We have decided that it is the responsibility of the Department of Public Works and the town manager to look into these things as they happen, and it's not anything we're going to consider.
that's what you're suggesting.
Well, that seems to be the position we're taking. I mean,
I agree with that.
I think it would be misleading to indicate that we're going to have a continuing consideration, because we're not.
Right.
Well, I feel that going down the road of select board members, we are supposed to respond to public concerns and complaints and whatever. But I don't think we want to go down the road of all of us going out on complaints and driving around and micromanaging our department heads. I don't think that's a good idea, and basically that's where I was coming from, Will.
I would agree. I don't think my memo micromanaged at all. I think indeed what it did, it was dismiss most of the complaints as unwarranted. Yeah, I'm done.
Madam Chairman?
You can speak, Jim. Please introduce yourself.
I think one of the things that you should consider,
Jim, the red button right in the mic, is it on? The red light?
well, there's a black button and a silver button.
There's the red light.
Please introduce yourself,
I'm in
Jim.
the red light district, I can move. I think one of the things that you should consider is, what is the actual width of the right-of-way? Is it a 32-foot right-of-way, or is it a 40-foot right-of-way? We have a road agent that over the years has been very meticulous about maintaining the roads and the right-of-ways and the ditches. And I think this is one of the things that people have banks. Sometimes they've got a fence between their existing property and the boundary of their ditch, which is a banking. But the fence was put there to keep cattle or children or other people in, and they didn't want them playing on the ditching, so they put the fence back there. So that we have to be concerned about what is our right-of-way, and I think Mike Fowler, over the years, has done an excellent job in maintaining ditches, and occasionally he has infringed an inch or two or something on the width of his ditch in order to maintain the width. And I think people who live in that area or any area that has bankings and ditches well appreciate the work of the town of Meredith in maintaining ditches.
Thank you, Jim.
So, to back up again, you would like me to word process a letter on behalf of the board that would state that, that's what I'm looking for now. It would state that the board's position is to continue to refer these matters to the town manager and the public works director, and that you're comfortable with the way they're being handled to date.
That sounds fine to me.
That would be my thought.
Thank you, Bill.
And you would like me to look at the rock wall, which I will do with Mike, and see what the circumstance is, and see if it's inside the roadway layout, and what we can and can't do with it. We'll do that.
That's number 2.
And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's for that.
Visitors and residents' comments, are there any other ones? I'll take Jim's as a resident comment. Select board comments?
No. Do you have a visitor's comment?
Is this about just that subject or any?
Anything.
Oh,
Would you like to speak?
yes, please. Thank you. I think I can operate this.
Press the silver button.
Got it. Good evening. Thanks for taking the time to hear me. My name is Tim Seeger, and yes, I am the husband of Hillary Seeger. I've made an application to try to get on the Public Works Facility Committee, I'm here this evening just to give you a brief background about myself and to answer any questions that the board may have. I've been a real estate appraiser for over 30 years. I've lived in 4 states around the country. I've been an appraiser in all 4. I currently hold 3 appraisers licenses: Florida, New Hampshire, and Vermont. I've been a resident of the state of New Hampshire for over 25 years, the last 4 here in the town of Meredith. Recently, the last 15 years, I've been a review appraiser, which means I'm the guy who looks at other appraisers' work for lending institutions. In my years in New Hampshire, I've lived in the town of Deering. I've been on the planning board in the town of Deering. And when I lived in the town of Antrim, I sat where you're sitting now. I did 3 years as a selectman. I feel strongly about providing assistance to the town if I'm qualified to do so. I feel very strongly that I am qualified to do so. Part of my tenure here in the state of New Hampshire, I was the chief appraiser for the state of New Hampshire DOT. I did that for a little over 12 years. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Any questions?
If none, just wanted to
Thank you.
stop in tonight.
Thank you for coming in, Tim.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, don't do it, don't.
Well,
I didn't have my mic on.
I'll turn my mic off.
Don't do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
Any other residents or visitors' comments? No. Select board comments?
I have a report.
Go ahead and move.
I will hold forth for some time. All right, well, you saw a report that the committee that was organized back in the late winter, early spring, came up with the unanimous conclusion to approve a system of 3 roundabouts, single-lane roundabouts. One of them would be at the 3 and 25 intersection, where the state felt that the only perfect solution was a 2-lane roundabout. The committee rejected it mostly on the ground that it really would have involved taking of land on all 4 corners. And it would have, in times of busy traffic, it really would have cut the town in 2, because it would have been impossible on a Sunday afternoon to get from Main Street over to Route 25 with a 2-lane roundabout functioning. So that was rejected. So that left us, as far as 3 and 25 goes, with something that the state would regard as less than perfect. On the other hand, it's not necessarily a disaster. I'll get into that. The effect of having a 1-lane roundabout at 3 and 25 is we will have minimal taking of land. There will be 2 lanes. There will be a 1-lane roundabout, but there will be 2 lanes going from Route 3 south onto Route 25 east. That should have a real impact on the corner there. That will be the biggest taking of land. The corner at Bay Point will be shaved quite a bit. On the other hand, because it's a single-lane roundabout, the lane approaching from the east will be 1 lane rather than 2. And so there will be no extra concrete on that 3-lane stretch. That means that the rest of that parking lot will not be touched, and the scenic park will not be touched. All right, on the south side of the intersection, the effect of this would be to reduce 6 lanes to 3. On the north side of the intersection, it would reduce 5 lanes to 2. There would be a lot of concrete chopped up and gotten rid of and replaced with landscaping and what have you. Okay, the next roundabout that I'll talk about is at Pleasant Street. It's really not being suggested to put that in order to improve traffic at Pleasant Street, because the town had its own homegrown solution for that worked pretty well. What we were concerned about is the effect of left turns out and in to the bank and to the shopping center. And putting a roundabout at Pleasant Street with a driveway that would lead into the back parking lot and into the shopping center behind the movie theater should help out a good deal in eliminating those left turns. CrossPoint has indicated that they support this. The bank, I don't know, has made any official statement, but they've been following this avidly, and my guess is that they support it as well. The possibility exists with respect to the roundabout at Pleasant Street, that white building that the bank calls the schoolhouse, it's an old gas station, could be affected, but it is also possible that they may be able to fit this in by fitting it between the schoolhouse and the movie theater without having to take any of that land or any of the building. There will be some land taken because the bank and the shopping center will lose some parking spaces in that area. Okay, the next roundabout is at Lake Street. Why are we putting a roundabout at Lake Street? Well, the reason we're having a roundabout at Lake Street is because we're not going to have any left turns in or out of Dover Street. That will be cut off. So Lake Street will serve as the way in which you can make a left turn up Lake Street or make a left turn coming out of Lake Street. It will also slow down traffic, and I'll get into this for pedestrians generally at all of these roundabouts. We're not putting in any walk, don't walk lights, hawk signals, or any of that. Instead, we're going to take our chances with the pedestrians because they will only have to cross one lane at a time. And on Route 3, if they're crossing from, say, the docks in the direction of the town, they will hold up traffic, only traffic on one side at a time, because there will be a center island of good size, and they won't have to stop traffic on both sides at the same time. They will eventually. And traffic will be moving slowly and steadily through this roundabout system. The pedestrians should be able to make it through without difficulty and without having to stop traffic and bring it completely to a halt. Okay, so what's the effect on traffic? Excepting for the summer weekends, I think traffic will move much more smoothly. There won't be a traffic light. It will be much better than it is now. On summer weekends, traffic moving north and east on Friday nights and Saturday mornings should be much improved because we'll have that two-lane right turn. As for Sunday afternoons, traffic probably will not see a similar sort of improvement. It may see some improvement only in the sense that traffic will be moving steadily without stopping for the light. Indeed, one of the DOT engineers suggested that the queue leading to the 3 and 25 intersection, that you could make it through the whole system in about 8 minutes on a Sunday afternoon. I think that might be a little bit optimistic, but making it through the town in 8 minutes compared to what you've got now, I think would be an improvement, but nobody's going to guarantee that. So anyway, you saw that there was a suggestion made that the committee, which was charged in March with dealing with DOT's program of what do we do with a $4 million federal grant which DOT wanted to apply between 104 and Pleasant Street. So we've limited ourselves to 104 and Pleasant Street. And indeed, DOT says that they have enough money between the federal grant and state money to cover the anticipated construction costs on this project, not including land acquisition costs. But as I said, land acquisition does not look to be a major thing. So we did not consider in the late arriving proposal that we consider an out-of-town bypass. The prior committee really never considered any such thing. The state has not suggested that this is anything that they're interested in. And so we regarded it as a distraction from our task, and we did not take it up. We're going to meet again on December 4th to sharpen the proposal. We won't be able to say exactly where things are going to go until the state gets its surveyors and engineers out. And they will not do that for certain until we have an approval at a public hearing on January 26th. But they are hoping to get their engineering and land acquisitions done in 2015. And it is possible that they may be able to complete this project by 2017. And I want to thank the committee for meeting for 9 months on a monthly basis and for really coming up with a unanimous solution.
Lou, could you just, the December 4th time and place of the meeting?
3 o'clock, Thursday, December 4th, Thursday, December 4th, 3 o'clock at the community center.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
just if I may speak to this a little bit, I for one would like to acknowledge and show my appreciation to Lou and the Route 3 and 25 committee. 9 months probably felt like a year and a half, but I think the fact that they came up with a unanimous consensus with the makeup of that group probably is somewhat of an accomplishment all on its own, but I've watched this thing for 35 years and will probably watch it for 35 years even after things are made. But I think it shows some progress, and I think it continues to send a clear message to those that just want to run traffic through at 60 miles an hour, that's just not what the town of Meredith wants to see for itself and the area. So I just want to thank them very much. That's a committee that was, I'm sure, trying at times, but has come up with a pretty good recommendation based on the resources, funding, and the allocations that are available. So, thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Any other select board comments? I have a short letter that I'm going to read to the board. It was sent to me, and it's to the board. Please express my sincere appreciation to the Board of Selectmen. It's dated November 10th, 2014. Please express my sincere appreciation to the Board of Selectmen and their expression of support for Lakes Region Public Access TV. We have been through some trying times and hope that this will be the beginning of a new LRPA TV. Your monetary assistance and support will enable us to do the business we plan would envision, a partnership between the towns and local businesses. This will allow those people who cannot get out a chance to view the programs that LRPA TV provides. Again, my sincere thanks, Nancy Leroy, Laconia at-large board member. On a positive note.
Thank you.
Let's see, new business, nothing. Old business, nothing.
Yeah, we got one.
Oh, sorry, my paper is quite scribbled upon at this point. Yes, we have one item, 14-35, Department of Public Works Facility Committee. And in your packet, you have, I believe, 6 public applications and 1 application from Mark Billings for the Energy Committee.
Madam Chair, I feel that at this time it's appropriate for me to recuse myself from this matter.
Okay, Lori. Thank you, I understand that. So I guess with the amount here, we're looking at, first off, I guess, a motion or whatever motion for 2 public members of the list that we have here.
Madam Chairman,
Peter?
may I just make a couple of comments before we digress into that matter at hand? Judging from what I call the positive response, we have 6 applications for 3 positions. A lot of qualified people, seems to be a fair amount of interest, but I just wanted to go back to my fellow board members and kind of review. As you all know, we decided on a 9-person committee makeup. And basically, it consisted of town manager, department, of DPW head, community development director, the superintendent, water and sewer department, and 2 boards of selectmen, and 1 representative from the Energy Committee. That left us with a couple of at-large. But looking at the makeup and the interest that's here and maybe some of the skill sets, I was wondering if my fellow board members would be interested in and maybe potentially listening to a modification to the 9-member makeup. And that would consist of, instead of having 2 selectmen, we would have 1 selectman and a board alternate, so that we could add 1 more member from the community at large. It puts us in a position where we have 5 individuals representing the town, but that gives us an opportunity to get 4 from the community. And looking at the project itself, it certainly appears to me that getting community buy-in and at the same time looking at those things that we do need with those that probably know best, that's a good mixture, and it's a good opportunity to expand that that list, so that we still have a 9 total, so we don't get into voting issues and that type of thing. So that was just my first thought. And then, of course, the second is, it always comes to the decision as to saying, well, we have potentially 3 slots and we have 6 people. It's also an opportunity to tell the public that we have some vacancies and other committees that could certainly use volunteers to fill out those committees. And it comes to mind of ZBA and Planning Board. And as some of you know, we actually had to continue a meeting of the Planning Board because we didn't have enough available. We had some excused absences and some medical leaves, and so we actually had to delay it by 2 weeks. And I know we've been urging people to come forward to volunteer for these committees. It just might be an excellent opportunity to make sure that the public is aware of that, and with those that may be successful, congratulations and welcome to the committee. But those that aren't, there certainly is another opportunity to serve. So with that, I will let there be discussion.
Lou?
I think Peter's suggestions, both suggestions, are good ones. And I suggest we cut it back to 1 selectman and 3 public members, plus 1 member from the Energy Committee.
I concur. That's, to me, it's great to have 6 applicants. Usually we get 2 positions and 1 applicant.
Yeah. Wonderful place to be in.
As I had a friend who used to say, let the good times roll. Gosh, yes. Great.
I think that's a great idea too. And I actually, Peter, you and I at this point are on that committee, and I certainly will step down and be the alternate fill-in for now. If you want to, I'll be happy to do that.
No, that's fine.
So with that said, I guess, do you want to now make a motion? Or,
Why don't we go down through them?
Well, we're just looking at the makeup.
Lou?
I move that we revise our organization chart for the Public Works Committee, and that it be the town members shall be the same. The town employee members shall be the same. There shall be 1 selectman, and there shall be 3 public members plus 1 member from the Energy Committee.
Second.
Thank you. Let's see, already unanimous, so we don't need to vote on it. We'll see, let's have a vote. Hillary's not voting. All right, so from there,
Okay. So now we're going to do the tough job.
Do Mark first, that's easy.
Yeah, well, Mark is easy.
or I can read through all these, or if-
No.
So Mr. Billings, we'll, I guess, why don't we just take a vote, just to make it official, that he's the only person that volunteered from the Energy Committee, so if we want to have us, we should vote on that.
Yeah,
just
that
to
one
make it
you do
official.
first and then do the other three. Yes, please.
Well, I might also add that he spoke with his fellow members on the Energy Committee, and
Right.
he agreed that he would be the representative to
That-
fill that
yeah.
slot.
So well, let's take a vote on Mark Billings first from the Energy Committee. Four.
Yep.
Okay. 4 in favor. If you've looked through, I guess I can just read through them for the public because the public isn't looking at this. So. The first one in our packet is Michael Pelzar. And do you guys want me to read through the entire application or just the name, and are you good with that?
Just a minute.
We don't usually do that, so. The second application is Tim Seeger. And the third is Donald Trudeau. The fourth is Bev Lapham. And I would assume that would be senior.
Yes.
Jonathan James. And Tom Hughes. That's fine, we can do a ballot.
I'm gonna go get paper for it since I'm not discussing it.
Can't do that.
We can't, hold on.
Cannot do that.
So,
Cannot do a ballot in open session,
okay,
in a public session.
Sorry.
All vote, motions and votes have to be in public and recorded.
sorry, I did not know that as the chair.
Well, shall I suggest 3 members, or? Madam Chair, I nominate Pelzar, Michael, Seeger, and Latham.
I think what I'll do is I'll take nominations from each of you, and then we'll just take the consensus, I guess. That's a fair way to do it. Nate?
I'd like to nominate Tim Seeger, Mike Pelzer, and Jonathan James.
2 for Pelzer, 2 for Seeger, 1 for Lapham, 1 for James. Okay.
Yeah. I would like to nominate Mike Pelzar, Jonathan James, and Donald Trudeau.
Trudeau. Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
I had Mike
Pelzar.
Pelzar, Jonathan James, and Donald Trudeau.
I guess I should have put myself first because now I have to be the deciding vote. I'm going to say Pelzar, Seeger, and Trudeau. So we have 4 Pelzar, 3 Seeger, 2 James, 2 Trudeau, and 1 Lapham.
Madam Chairman?
Vote.
I changed my vote from Lapham to Trudeau.
So we will congratulate Pelzar, Seeger, and Trudeau to be the public members of the Public Works Facility Committee. And Phil, do we need to specify a certain time, or is that just going to be an ongoing until we no longer need the committee?
No, the charge of the committee is that to, for this project, once it's done, it lapses. Can I ask that you take a motion on the vote?
I'm sorry. So now I need a motion for those, to nominate those three, to appoint those three, Pelzar, Seeger, and Trudeau.
All right. I'll make a motion that we approve Mike Pelzar, Tim Seeger, and Donald Trudeau to serve as community members at large on the Public Works Committee.
In a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right?
Thank you. Sorry, Phil, as you can see, I haven't done this very many times.
And Madam Chairman,
Yes.
again, I think would be appropriate to send a thank you to everybody who did make application. And in that letter, take the opportunity to suggest that there are other committees in town that could use their services and would appreciate them considering those.
I think that's a good idea.
The point is, I think people make the time to fill out the application and put themselves out there that they should receive the acknowledgement of that.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, at this time, I need a motion to go into non-public.
I move to non-public session.
Well, you gotta read.
We have to read why we're going into non-public.
Based on pursuant to 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2A. And Phil, do you have that handy?
I do.
If you could read it for
I
me?
did.
That's going to be a good committee.
Oh, I did. 91A.
Colon 3, Roman
3,
number
Roman numeral
2A.
2A, and that is the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him or her, unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Yeah, Hillary, you're back on board. We missed you.
All New Hampshire General.
Okay, so I will now, let's see, I'm going to at 5:45 adjourn our regular meeting. Now we need to take a vote.
Madam Chairman,
I will unadjourn the meeting.
we're proposing to adjourn it, and Cindy interrupted for information. The last statement that you read on the motion, would you please read it aloud in its entirety, please? Where you were nominating people to a committee, you had some things that didn't just sound right to me. You just were assuming everybody was there. You didn't read off who the committee was. You said you will appoint these to the committee, but you were talking about more than 5 during the discussion.
Did you write down the motion?
No, Madam Chairman, let me rephrase it. We voted to change the makeup of the committee, and so my final motion was to appoint Town Manager Phil Warren, Michael Fowler as Department Head Director of Public Works, John Edgar as Community Development Director, Dan Leonard as Superintendent of Water and Sewer Department, Peter Brothers as Selectman, Mark Billings as the representative from the Energy Committee, Michael Pelzar, Community at Large, Timothy Seeger, Community at Large, and Donald Trudeau, Community at Large, to serve on the 9-person committee for the Public Works Study Group.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Now I will adjourn again. Now I need a motion to go into non-public or a roll call.
We did that.
We take the roll call when we go in.
Yep.
Got it.